This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's May 28th, 2025. On this day in 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act into law. That law opened the door to what we now call the Trail of Tears, the forcible removal of several nations of native groups from their ancestral lands in this part of the United States to what is now Oklahoma. And part of living in Middle Tennessee now is that you very likely traveled or crossed at least one portion of a trail taken by the Cherokee people who were displaced, even if you didn't know it. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The Trail of Tears was not just one path. The people being moved out west were all headed to one specific zone, beyond all the land that white people wanted at the time, into the wilderness that might as well have been labeled "There Be Dragons" on the map. They shared that destination, but they came from all over the Southeast. Tens of thousands from the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole nations. They were made to leave their homes in Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, the Carolinas. There were mountains and hollers and rivers to navigate around, which necessitated many different routes. And the variety of folks in charge of leading those groups had various opinions about which way was the best for whatever time of year they happened to be making the journey. Altogether, that means the actual trails that make up the trail, so to speak, are many, and they are all over this area. Here in Nashville, for example, one of the paths followed Murfreesboro Road and Lafayette into downtown, then along 2nd Avenue and north on Whites Creek Pike. Down in Rutherford County, the main gate of the old Air Force Base in Smyrna stands at roughly the same spot where one of the trails turned after following a branch of the Stones River for a while. These trails are everywhere, with few, if any, signs left to show that one of the most significant events in American history took place there. From the very start, the people who settled these lands, the ones who stood to gain from them being open to farmers and people wanting to start new communities and businesses, those folks didn't really want to look at the removal face-on. There are very few mentions of it in local newspapers from that time. The fact of how the land became available for white folks to use tends to be left out of the stories passed down through families. It certainly wasn't mine. It was only a few years ago that the penny dropped for me, and I realized that the dates when my ancestors first moved into Southwest Tennessee and Mississippi aligned almost perfectly with when the native people were forced out of those areas. But the mid-state residents of that time had to have been very aware of exactly what was going on, even if they didn't want to be. On average, each traveling group had about 1,000 people. 1,000, most of them on foot. That's a very large group moving very slowly, walking right through towns and cities. Nashville was the biggest community in this area by far, and its population was only about 6,000. Most of the other places where the trail passed through, the traveling group far outnumbered the locals. Imagine the impact it must have made. For those who watched them go by, it must have been the kind of sight that sticks with a person for their entire life. But how many just closed their doors, pulled the curtains tight, and essentially shut their eyes? They believed what they were told, that all of the native people, no matter what their nation, were the same. And what they were, according to the propaganda, was trouble, violent, savage. They were told to be scared, and they were. And once all was said and done with the Trail of Tears, it was out of sight, out of mind. The Southeast as a whole seemed to agree to basically pretend it never happened. But of course, it did happen. And of course, it had a profound and lasting impact on the thousands who were forced to leave their homes, to those who lost loved ones on the way, who had to figure out a new landscape, new ways of finding food, making shelter, and starting from scratch on the other end of that long, painful walk. They and their descendants have never forgotten what took place. Each year there are gatherings in various places along those trails to remember what happened. There's a memorial walk for members of the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma. A huge motorcycle rally follows close to one historic route from North Carolina down to Huntsville and back up through Memphis and Arkansas, all the way to the Seminole Nation's reservation in Oklahoma. Here and there, you can still find remnants of the original footpaths to walk and remember on your own. I've hiked along one section in David Crockett's State Park near Lawrenceburg, which is sadly fitting. Crockett was basically run out of Tennessee politics because of his opposition to Indian removal. And when it finally happened, officials pointedly made sure one of the paths cut through that property, which was Crockett's homestead. The message was loud and clear. You want these people around? Well, see how you feel when they're marched through your land 1,000 at a time. That kind of ugliness and disdain was the prevailing attitude for a long time. But with the passage of time, more and more people in our area are interested in raising awareness of that part of our history. And one by one, markers and monuments are being added to spots along the routes. In Pulaski, for example, there's now a Trail of Tears Memorial Interpretive Center with a museum, a park, and bronze statues depicting a Cherokee family. After all, just because previous generations tried to turn a blind eye doesn't mean we should. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What, Where, Wednesday. That's coming up after the newscast.
At WPLN, we tell stories about honoring our families.
If he become a monk, that means that mom and dad will go to heaven when they pass away.
And preserving memories.
I never heard of a Rosenwald School. Nobody never told me that's where I went.
I'm Char Daston, and my reporting connects you with your neighbors and the important moments in their lives.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Tennessee universities are bracing themselves for the loss of federal funding for scientific research. The affected cuts include research into rural mental health, vaccine education programs, and developing evacuation route technology for active shooter scenarios. The University of Tennessee system says it's lost $37.7 million in funding, and Middle Tennessee State University has lost more than $500,000. Tennessee Lookout reports the primary reason the Trump administration gives for the cuts is that the studies don't align with its priorities. For the UT system, 40% of the cuts targeted research that referenced diversity, inclusion, minorities, race, underserved groups, and sexuality or gender. Vanderbilt, Tennessee State University, East Tennessee State University, and the University of Memphis did not respond to the Lookout's request for information, but records maintained by the Department of Government Efficiency lists millions of dollars in grant cuts to those schools as well. Meanwhile, Tennessee is leading the nation in the number of students who completed the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. The state's Higher Education Commission is hailing the rankings as a milestone as the state works to increase access to higher education. FAFSA is required for all students who want to receive federal aid or any form of financial aid for college. The commission named 158 high schools across the state that had at least a 90% FAFSA completion rate, or that saw at least 5% growth in completion rates. Metro Nashville Public Schools could get a 13% budget increase under a proposal from Mayor Freddie O'Connell. At least some of that money would go toward more support for what are called classroom associates. These are full and part-time employees assigned to specific schools who can serve as substitute teachers with full safety training and access to professional development. The Tennessean reports the district now has some 500 classroom associates, as well as a pool of traditional substitutes who can be assigned day to day. The proposed school budget, which would take effect in July, would total about $1.3 billion. It also includes a 5% pay raise for teachers and would cover the cost of placing nurses in every school, something federal funding had been paying for since the pandemic. Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles is asking Nashville's mayor to turn over any documentation of the city's response to recent immigration raids. In a Memorial Day livestream, Ogles indicated the House Judiciary and Homeland Security committees will investigate Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Ogles requested those investigations earlier this month. So far, the websites for those committees do not show any hearings scheduled on the matter or statements confirming that they've agreed to do so. Ogles is particularly focused on an executive order that O'Connell amended this month. It concerns how city employees and supervisors handle communications from federal immigration authorities. When it comes to homelessness, waiting is a big part of daily life. After applications are filled out for housing and services, people often wait weeks, months, or even longer before they get word back. On WPLN's latest episode of This is Nashville, We hear from service providers and unhoused people who are navigating this liminal space. One woman, Irene, who's living in her car, says this waiting period not only affects her, but her children as well.
My son asked me, and he was 15 at the time, okay, you got a place yet? Have you heard anything yet? Almost every day he would ask that. And I've been out here so long now that he has stopped asking that. So now that the process is almost over, he's worrying now whether I'll find a place that's decent that I can bring him into. So that's where most of my worries lie.
You can hear more from Irene and other people waiting while living outdoors in the latest installment of In My Place on the This Is Nashville podcast feed or on our homepage. Nashville has designated the heart of the city as an outdoor library for trees. Downtown Nashville is now classified as an arboretum with more than 50 different tree species along sidewalks and parks. WPLN's Caroline Eggers says the arboretum is located in Nashville's least green area.
Downtown Nashville is now a Level 1 arboretum. That means it's in a designated public space that has at least 30 different species of approved trees that are labeled. The city's transportation department and a group called the Nashville Downtown Partnership initiated the project. In downtown, each tree species, like the overcup oak and sweet bay magnolia, has been mapped. About 100 of the more than 3,000 trees will have signs with more information. Downtown is quite gray overall, with lots of concrete and relatively limited trees. The most recent official estimate from the city is that the greater downtown area, depending on the boundary used, had just 7 or 8% tree canopy cover in 2021. It's possible that figure has since gone up a bit with city tree planting efforts. And now, with the new arboretum, Nashville might have more motivation to protect and expand its canopy, which has been rapidly dwindling in the areas where most people live.
The Nashville Downtown Arboretum is the second space to be classified in the past year. Fannie Mae Dees Park is also now an arboretum. What's considered to be the largest collection of punk rock records will soon be housed at Middle Tennessee State University. The Center for Popular Music is acquiring the archives from the punk magazine Maximum Rock and Roll, which has been a San Francisco staple for decades. The donation includes the archives of the magazine known as the Punk Bible. The collection includes 60,000 records, plus photos, notes, and other ephemera dating to its start in 1982. That's just a few years before MTSU's center opened to foster American music. MTSU curators are calling it one of the most exciting moments in the center's history. They expect to begin cataloging and digitizing the collection this summer. A Woodland middle school student made it through the first round of the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Vidula Kalathar is a rising 8th grader from Brentwood who loves reading sci-fi books and competing in debates. She advanced to the quarterfinals after spelling the word asnas correctly.
Asnas. Asnas. That is correct.
Asnas is a Persian card game similar to poker. Kalathar is one of 3 Tennessee students who made it to the national competition. The next round begins this morning. And a correction to a story that we shared yesterday. We suggested that Super Bowl host stadiums must meet a minimum capacity. The NFL has relaxed that requirement in recent years. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Well, we are midway through the first unofficial week of summer. There's just something about this time of year that feels like there's so much possibility for a good time, right? Well, if you're looking for what to do, Marquise always has a few suggestions.
My name is Marquise Munson, here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What Were Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Live music opportunities begin tonight with Allison Russell at the Ryman. On Friday night, the Greeting Committee performs at the Blue Room, and at the same venue on Saturday, Nashville band Brassville takes the stage. Wrap up your week Tuesday with May Simonis at Dark Matter. And for more events, head over to WNXP.org/events. This week for What We're Wednesday, we discuss Celebrate Music City happening at New Heights Brewery on Sunday from 12 until 6 p.m. The free all-ages community festival will highlight Nashville's Latin music scene, featuring artists ranging from jazz to soul to rock. We talked with the founders of the organization behind this effort to uplift music from many different communities.
I'm Jason Garriott, co-founder and executive director of Music Neighbors. So we started Music Neighbors to really give back to music. I got super into music when I was 12 years old. I lost my father to suicide. In a really bad place with that. I missed him a lot, didn't know how to process that. And my mom got me my first guitar for Christmas that year. And as soon as I put it in my hands, I felt like I had a lifeline. It's like that power that music can bring you. And I was able to use that therapeutically to process the trauma of losing my father that way. And then eventually coming out of my shell and getting involved in the community. So music is not only good for the individual going through something, but it's also a really good place to find a community. In college, came up with a concept for Music Neighbors, and we're really want to give back to music. So Nashville was on my radar because Jimi Hendrix was one of my main influences, and I read a quote that he said he really learned how to play guitar in Nashville. I was I thought Nashville was just country music. Came down here with Chelsea, and every time that we came down to visit, which was 3 or 4 times, we're why are we going back to Indianapolis, where we're originally from? We just decided to start the nonprofit to give back to music for Music City. Since we've been here, the growth of Nashville has really made it difficult for music artists, especially independent music artists, to keep pursuing careers here in their artistry. So all of our programming really goes to support the independent music artists, but also the ecosystem and infrastructure artists need to thrive here too. I was standing in line for 9 Inch Nails tickets when they forced you to go to the box office. And I was talking to people and they're it's just country music Americana here. I'm no, it's not. We have a thriving rock scene. We have an amazing R&B and hip hop scene. We have an amazing Latin music scene. And they were just completely surprised. Made me realize we need to do more advocacy for these different music communities because the people that live in Nashville don't even know it's here.
Quiero ser la mejor versión de mí.
I'm Chelsea Garriott, the other co-founder and operations director at Music Neighbors. With Celebrate Music City, we wanted to feature artists from these different communities and really just delve in and celebrate those individual communities and the wide array of genres that are represented in them. So our Latin night will have anything from a folk artist, more traditional Latin music, to a rock artist, trying to showcase that, hey, even if this is just a certain community, there's a lot of genre representation within that community still. We actually partnered with Global Education Center to provide free dance lessons at the beginning of each festival day. So we're really excited to have them out, and they'll have a booth as well, so you can learn more about everything that they do for the community and, take a fun little dance lesson.
We've partnered with La Cara Productions. The guy that runs that is Rick Rodriguez, and he is doing so much for Latino Hispanic music artists here in Nashville, really trying to get them more connected to the music industry. And then also working with Musicana, which Karina Daza heads up, and she's an incredible music artist herself. She played at our Celebrate Music City Festival last year, and she just completely floored us, but she's an amazing person. And then we also partnered with Inner Circle and New Renaissance as well to help with the R&B and hip-hop curation and promotion. We found it's just really cool to be able to work with those collectives that are so intertwined with those music communities. And it's just been amazing to get connected to more music artists that we wouldn't have been connected to otherwise. And then we also have vending sponsors as well that are a part of each community as well. So we were really trying to help showcase local artists and craft vendors and small businesses as well at the festival.
Their next Celebrate Music City event will be held at New Heights on Sunday, June 8th, celebrating hip-hop and R&B. For more information about Celebrate Music City and Music Neighbors and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What We're Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.